Ladies and gentlemen, we have DressRosa. Oh yeah, DressRosa baby! Mark is finally here. Probably my favorite arc, to be honest, behind Marineford. To me, it's Marineford, DressRosa, Skypia, and so on and so forth. Those are the like, man, look, I'm not even going to talk too much. Y'all already know I'm not going to talk too much. I'm not talking too much. Mark, it's your time, baby. Show me what you experienced on the island of DressRosa. On the other end, play my intro, and let's go ahead and watch this video. Let's go. DressRosa. What's going on, gang? It's your boy. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
It's been a pretty surreal journey over the last 4 months, to say the least. Coming from being a complete newbie to the series to now having covered 745 chapters in total, and on the 27th arc of the series. And I'm not even covering this entire arc in this one video. I'm barely covering 40% of it, because DressRosa is so unbelievably garbage. Never have I read through an arc that has offered so much, so often. It's absolutely brilliant and chock full of interesting information and story. So much information, in fact, that I had to tackle this monster of an arc in 2 separate videos. In this one, I'll be covering the events covered in chapters 700.
You dog, you know, I'm hoping that you end it at the end of the tournament. I'm assuming that that's where you're going to end it at, probably. Let's see. Let's see what happens.
All the way through to 745, with next week fully completing the arc. And let me tell you, there was way more than enough to review and talk about in this one video alone. It has more key events than both Fishman Island and Punk Hazard combined, and has captured my attention like no other story that's come before. So what are we waiting for? Let's take off my first impressions of
shit.
Review 4, a story that's impressive, clever, and action-packed in equal measure. I'm totally not Mark, and this
DressRosa.
DressRosa, there were a few things I want to talk about real quick that I didn't have time to or simply forgot to cover in last week's video. So let's start with something I didn't really have much to say about in the first place, but I totally understand why it's there and why it's important. And that's the C-plot of Punk Hazard, the Rescue of Momonosuke. I enjoyed how this was handled, but didn't really have much to say about it. In my Punk Hazard video, I mentioned that the entire motivation for Kinemon in that arc was to rescue himself. During the third arc,
Hey! Let's go! Yeah! I hope you listened to my video and said it right. Kinemon. Thank you.
When Luffy gets trapped in a trash heap, we find Momonosuke having eaten a devil fruit that transformed him into a traditional Chinese dragon. Again, this looks like one of the fake devil fruits that were developed by Caesar at the time. He doesn't really play that much of a role in this arc, but it does strike me as something that will become much more important later on, specifically with regards to the fake devil fruit that he's eaten and the implications of that said item. Next up, Zoro and Tashigi versus Monet. During the final effort to reach Caesar in Punk Hazard, Zoro found himself needing to stop Monet and eventually Tashigi with the G5 troops supporting the effort. What's interesting about this isn't necessarily the choreography for me or the action in and of itself. In this altercation with Monet, despite her posing a real threat to everyone, Zoro refuses to take her out effectively simply because she's a woman. And what's interesting about this specific scene is that Tashigi, someone who reminds Zoro of his childhood rival, takes specific issue with that. Now, the specific struggle his old childhood rival had was overcoming expectations from society to become a warrior. And I don't think Zoro fully understands that yet. And this scene was a direct indication of that. What he chose to do in not taking out Monet in this instance is quite obviously a mistake on Zoro's part in the story. And had Caesar not at the perfect time stabbed her in the heart unknowingly, Zoro would have been single-handedly responsible for the deaths of hundreds and his crew, as Monet blew herself and the facility up in Caesar's name. This for me indicated that this will eventually be Zoro's arc, to come to respect the ability of a warrior regardless of their gender, to empathize with and understand his childhood rival finally, and to see Tashigi as a warrior and not as a woman when they battle. And that brings us to what I wanted to talk about this week. What Punk Hazard means and DressRosa. Personally, I thought how the last arc...
Let's go! I like the one... It's just beautiful the way you articulate shit, man. I know you take your time writing and everything. Like, you know, like when I do my storyboards and stuff, I do the same thing. But it's just beautiful how you get your point across. You see what I'm saying? Like, you really do get your point across, bro. You get your point across. People understand what you're talking about. Enjoy it.
A much needed alley-oop when it came to stakes, tension, and plot.
Much needed.
Introduced us to the lesser subordinates of Doflamingo in Baby 5 and Buffalo as they are tasked with retrieving Caesar right before the end of that arc. However, they fail, and in doing so, we do find that they seal the fate of their master, leaving Law to give him an ultimatum. Either he kills Caesar, and Doflamingo would have to face the wrath of Kaido and with what he needs, or, more favorably, he must quit the 7 Warlords of the Sea and renounce his position as king of DressRosa. Needless to say, he chooses the option that doesn't have him dancing with an Emperor of the Sea. Into DressRosa. Law, along with the Straw Hats and Caesar, make their way to the island.
Here we go.
Off as part of their bargain. But one other curious interaction occurred that I'm guessing has a big implication for the future. At the very end of this Punk Hazard arc, with the Straw Hats having gone and Doflamingo having Smoker is left to take the wrath of Dawn. But moments before he loses his life, Aokiji stops him right in his tracks, protecting someone that he refers to as an old friend, before later suggesting that the greatest challenge yet faced is on the horizon, then disappearing once again. Now, if that doesn't make you curious as to what's to come, I don't know what will. And with that, the Straw Hats have finally arrived at DressRosa.
Here we go.
They're finally on the island, and I friggin' love this arc and the direction it's heading personally. But moreover, I am utterly floored by the staggering amount of information, detail, and depth this arc adds to the overall One Piece world, while feeling way lighter than it has any right to be, while also introducing what feels like hundreds of new characters. But to be fair, most of these are no-names from the bouts in the Colosseum later in the story. And yeah, you heard me right, this arc has Colosseum battles to the death.
He said this arc has
that might be one of the coolest characters introduced yet. And the funny thing about all this is, everything I just said here doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of what DressRosa has to offer.
No, DressRosa is huge.
Arc did that I haven't seen any other arc do better, except for perhaps Marineford.
You're still hurt, huh? You're still hurt.
The events that unfold go down, and I'm not exaggerating here, it only builds throughout this arc's runtime, arriving at a point during chapter 745 that has me primed to read more once I get done recording this video. I mean, I'm serious. I'm picking it right up after this, and personally, I think that's a really important thing to be feeling at this point in the story. When your arc is as long as DressRosa is, there are 2 things you need to make sure are taken care of, and that's pacing and how interesting it is.
Exactly.
It's balanced, but DressRosa does this better than any other arc so far in my opinion.
True enough.
Keeping things interesting by interweaving existing and newly established plot threads together in very compelling ways, and it keeps the pace feeling snappy by revealing new pieces of vital information, crucial new characters, and swerves that keep us on the edge of our seats and unbalanced.
Oh yeah, the little...
Just what the hell is happening on this island?
The little sprites running around.
In addition to the setup and goals established in Punk Hazard, something I criticized in the last video seems to have been rectified in DressRosa, and that's paneling. Though still not at its best, our large section of this portion of DressRosa is handled well and clear, easily communicating how the characters are feeling as well as the wildlife, architecture, cultures, and
oh yeah, dude with the horns is a fucking
of DressRosa. But before ever landing on the island, the crew and Law establish and break down the plan of action before diving into their respective squads.
Right.
The first squad is to deliver Caesar, the second squad is to take care of and watch over the Sunny, and finally the third team is to destroy the factory that produces the artificial devil fruits. 3 separate teams with 3 very different goals, and right from the get-go, this made for some really great pacing as each scene offered something
Everything
new and
is
fresh compared to the
always,
other.
yeah.
However, something curious regarding this section that I found
Fucking Frankie.
particularly noteworthy was Luffy's exclusion from the squad that drops off Caesar and his placement alongside Sanji, Frankie,
Oh,
and
no.
Zoro in the factory demolition squad. And while Robin and Usopp went with Law to deliver Caesar, the fact that Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji weren't assigned to that particular section told me something. And it was confirmed later. And I will talk about that later, but right now, there are 3 groups established right away, all with different missions, and what made this work so well for me was that the conflicts each encounters made the story infinitely more engaging and exciting.
Interesting.
Whether it be through the Sunny's abrupt and artistic overtaking, the treacherous taken to Greenbit Island to drop off Caesar, or the very curious scene shared by Luffy and the older blind man as they stop to eat en route to the factory in DressRosa. And speaking of that last one, I found it to be awesome, simple, and perhaps telling of what's to come in the future. Having decided to stop to grab some food and drink, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Kinemon, and Frankie all sit down in an establishment as they overhear the older blind man being taken advantage of by some thugs. And with Luffy being Luffy, he walks up to them and makes sure that they play fair, resulting in him making all of his money back and giving his thanks to Luffy. But just as suddenly as he came into their lives, a massive hole opens up in the floor of the cafe, swallowing up anyone that were to have fallen into it. As the old man makes his way to the door, Luffy remarks at how strong he is, asking who he was. In response to this, he turns to face Luffy and suggests that keeping that to himself might be better for the both of them. Okay, so immediately hooked, but what's more is that due to that important key event, Zoro
Fujitora!
any of his swords. They've been stolen. Zoro then concludes that the old man must have taken them, despite everyone around them seemingly concluding that it must have been fairies or something. Okay. And so this leads to that particular group tasked with destroying the factory to fraction into a bunch of different ones. And with this next scene, I knew I was in store for something really, really fun and impressive. When Usopp, Robin, Law, and Caesar arrive on Greenbit while exploring the jungle of the area for Navy soldiers, both Robin and Usopp
they find
are taken
something
underground
really good
by these tiny people. All the while, Law is met with 2 interesting
Tiny
individuals for the exchange: Doflamingo and that old blind man.
Fujitora!
Fujitora, he is a new admiral of the Navy. My jaw in this moment hit the floor, and as my jaw is on this floor, it's also explained in Robin and Usopp's situation down underground with these tiny little things that the fairies the townspeople were speaking of actually did steal Zoro's sword. And that is what I meant about 2 seemingly unrelated plot threads becoming tangled, creating tension and excitement much more than what they would have been able to do on their own. And there's more. This scene keeps on giving.
It just, Fujitora goes the fuck off!
Now facing Law, on top of fairies actually existing and stealing Zoro's swords, Doflamingo knows that he's lied. He is still part of the 7 warlords, and he is still the king of DressRosa. You just got pranked. Which means this admiral dude that we see before us right now that can summon meteors needs to be contended with along with Doflamingo.
Hello, that can summon meteors.
Left alone in a standoff against Doflamingo and Fujitora, who can create meteors. Hats are scattered across DressRosa doing God knows what. And this isn't even the good part yet. This is the setup. So let me talk about one of my favorite aspects of the story, and that is the Colosseum. Speaking somewhat generally, this arc is unique as it's the only one that has ever created mystery simply
or
by
a tournament.
Its inhabitants in an effect.
Or a tournament. The only other one that did the tournament was the Davy Back fights. That was like tournament style, and battle style and stuff like that. This is the first tournament that One Piece has delivered. People sleep on this one because they don't consider this, but this is a tournament. And it's one of the greatest tournaments in the anime. Just saying.
effective way. Dotted all across the island are living toys that can talk and move on their own. No one seems to know why or how these little guys came to be here, but at the end of every day, they need to return to a certain place on the island. And the cornerstone of this mystery comes in the form of a character I will call henceforth Toy Soldier. With Zoro having gone looking for his swords and Sanji having become a little preoccupied with the dancing girl called Viola, both Luffy and Frankie stumble across this little guy outside of an event held in the Colosseum of DressRosa by the King. A free-to-enter tournament with the winning prize being the Flame Devil Fruit containing powers once held by Luffy's brother, Fire Fist 8.
Yes!
This blew my mind. The excitement suddenly shot up from an 8 to 100 degrees Celsius. The Flame Fruit is by far and away my favorite devil fruit and my favorite power. Not only am I massively invested in Luffy and someone on our side to get these epic fire powers, but I am also an enormous fan of tournament arcs in general. If done well, they offer a really interesting but easy to understand vehicle for great story to be told, and it offers far more characters the chance to establish themselves that otherwise might be impossible to do under different circumstances.
Yeah. Shonen usually give arcs.
We have a terrific goal to shoot for in the
tournament arcs pretty fast.
Tons of great matchups to look forward to as well. And speaking of Dragon Ball, something I really appreciated while reading through this was Luffy's choice of disguise. You see, in the first tournament of Dragon Ball, Master Roshi disguise to make sure Goku doesn't win. But in this tournament, Luffy dresses up like Master Roshi, which I thought was hilarious upon first viewing. Regardless, it's here Luffy becomes acquainted with the facility sporting a massive statue of its supposed finest gladiator with 3,000 victories and 0 losses.
3K.
Though the legitimacy of this particular person having ever existed seems to have been lost to time. In addition to that, we to see 4 separate free-for-all battles, each with over 100 people participating. The 4 winners from that will then move into the next and final round. And what makes this entertaining is the hijinks and effort Luffy has to go to in order to protect his identity from being revealed. Meeting terrible individuals like Jesus Burgess from Blackbeard's crew sent their
Jesus Burgess. Oh, I fucking hated this guy, bro. What a passion. Jesus Burgess.
Somewhat similarly, everyone else who's introduced in this section wants the fruit to further their own selfish desires. Like Cavendish, who was once the most popular pirate before Luffy came along and now resents him. There's Chin-Jiao and his family who have a long-standing beef with the monkey name, but of course there's also those with altruistic goals, and none better embody that in this tournament than the character of Rebecca. An undefeated gladiator who's as kind as her outfit is ridiculous. And with these new characters as well as old ones like Bellamy, who's back by the way, and an outlook on life. Full of respect for Luffy, it serves as a fantastic way to manage a manga's pacing. There's some great comedy, some touching moments, and some revealing instances like Luffy's collision with someone Garp crossed many years back, and he still holds a grudge against Luffy and his family. And heading into his first battle royal with Blackbeard's flunky and the crazy man-eating loon called Bartolomeo having already qualified, Luffy is next up to top of all of those in his group, including Chin-Jiao. Something that I also really liked about this section specifically that's on display is its panelists. There's some superb
with the big ass head.
Great imagery using Luffy's small body to heavily contrast all the massive opponents he's standing against.
Yeah.
This battle is pretty awesome. There's a fighter from Elbaf that towers over all of the competition, but one that stands out beyond all others is Chin-Jiao when he begins using the same hockey power as that Luffy specializes in. The power of the Supreme King. I really enjoyed Chin's design here. It's understated and, frankly, really awesome when he channels his hockey ability. And with one punch, everyone in the arena is sent flying out of bounds as the two titans clash their tremendous fists together. There's an awesome sense of impact and occasion during this clash, and the panels capture that. But to cut a long story short, he resents Luffy because Garp destroyed the shape of his head, preventing him from unlocking his treasure somewhere underneath the ground. It's the sins of the father, or grandfather in this instance, type of thing. But Luffy has this great line in response to his complaining. He says, "One punch, who cares? He's punched me countless times." And then proceeds to punch him with a massive fist that gives him back the shape of his head, winning the battle royal. I'm still not sure what, if any, significance Chin-Jiao plays in the greater art or greater story as a whole, but maybe it was only a chance occurrence and that's going to be the end of him here and now. But that doesn't really sound like One Piece to me, really, so I wouldn't be surprised if he again somewhere. Regardless, that's him pretty much done for the rest of this video's material at least, and with Luffy now qualified, we're greeted with another interesting encounter. And this Colosseum plotline for Luffy, while we were invested in the Flame fruit coming into Luffy's possession, also exposed to dozens of new characters. And this is honestly rich for comedic moments, like this Bartolomeo guy I touched on earlier. Introduced as this vicious savage of a human being said to have even eaten people, when he speaks about Luffy and his exploits, it's revealed that he's actually a crazed superfan.
Superfan.
In Logtown, the day Luffy declared that he wants to be the Pirate King, while on the chopping blocks, he sort of becomes a vital tool later in the story, but essentially, he's a crazed superfan, and that's just fun. And little things like that, and characters that are not important, others very important, lead to some really fun moments in the story.
Rebecca.
Like this one with Rebecca, congratulating Luffy on his win and her round still to come in Block D. She gives Luffy food before luring him down into the cell blocks to be ambushed, all in an effort to squash the competition and give herself a better chance at winning. But...
wow. Easy.
It's here we begin to see and understand how deep the turmoil within DressRosa goes, and we start to get this impression that all is not well in this strange place during Rebecca's flashback. And this is one of many flashbacks Oda uses to tremendous effect in this arc, each one after the other recontextualizing what we've already seen, adding further detail and history to this already
toy soldier
and live world he's created, which is exactly what a great flashback scene should do. And we get a bunch of these great flashback sequences in this story that ultimately culminate in a fantastic swerve that I honestly didn't see coming, even in the slightest. But I'll get to that a little bit later. During this particular flashback, we are made aware of Rebecca's tragic past, how she remembers her mother fondly, how they struggled for food, and how one day, after she left to go get some food for her, she returned to them in the arms of a toy soldier, dead. It's sad to say the least, and it's here we begin to understand the significance of this little one-legged soldier. And it's also obvious to discern through this flashback why Rebecca is the way that she is. She was cared for and trained intensely by the toy soldier and now can defend herself. She knows that there's something wrong and she wants to win the devil fruit to bring about order and peace in her country. And these are more than reasonable goals, we find, as she also is the wielder of a particular type of haki. In this instance, she can dodge and predict her opponent's movements like no other, effectively eliminating people using their own momentum against them. So she's not really a slouch either, although her outfit is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And all the while this is taking place during the tournament, Frankie has been in the company of this toy soldier whom we now understand as someone that looks over and protects her, explaining why he was there in the first place, and it's that sort of attention to detail that I adore. But don't get comfortable here because this is only just
where it gets
started,
big.
and from this point on, the story kicks itself into overdrive.
This is where it gets big.
This arc is nuts for getting stuff done and exposing new interesting plot threads. As
Makes
of right
you
now,
wanna...
Frankie is with the toy soldier heading for the rendezvous point. Sanji has been led astray and then changed a woman named Viola for the better, who also is guiding him in another direction. Zoro has managed to track down the little person who stole his sword, and he too is being filled in on what's going on. It seems like all of this is connected, and it totally is.
It totally is.
Reading through it. And if that wasn't enough, while this is all happening, Law is being destroyed by the combined forces of Fujitora, who can create meteors. And that's not even to make mention of the situation back in the Sunny. It's one terrible thing after another befalling our heroes in this story, which on its own serves to build up a lot of tension.
Oh yeah, it makes them. She makes them smooth as shit.
Helps us retain interest in the story without getting winded from overexposure to a particular setting. There's a lot of variety here, with one scene being water, another being open beach, more in the city, and one in a coliseum. Every scene offers something narratively and visually different, which is a welcome change from Punk Hazard or Fishman Island in the last few weeks. But back to the story at hand. You see, a plan of some description has been spoken of whenever these little fairy characters called Totanas are on screen. Once again, the concept of this plan being made today sounds somewhat circumstantial, with it being the day the Straw Hats arrive and all, until you realize that they chose to do this there and then because they too were under the impression that Doflamingo had quit the Seven Warlords. Everything in this story makes sense so far and tied together in such a natural way, it hurts. Every piece of information forms a greater picture.
It hurts. I like the way you explained it. You thought it was going to be coincidental this time, huh? I was waiting for that.
adding a new angle or means with which to view the narrative from, giving greater appreciation to these little guys' plight, as well as the horrid circumstances now after befalling the Sunny and the team of Nami, Brook, and Chopper left to guard it. You see, and this is why I love Doflamingo. Doflamingo was one step ahead of literally everyone from the get-go. He never quit the warlords. He staged the entire article in the papers. He planted the devil fruit as a prize in the Colosseum because he wanted Luffy to be lured there to be captured, and he has set his people to take care of the ship. And take care of them they do. Yola, now one of the members of the Don Quixote family, stands between the Straw Hats and their beloved ship. Having used her devil fruit ability, the likes of which we haven't seen in quite some time, changing them all into different works of art, all of them in different styles.
Oh, he got the
sort of Picasso, I think, but the best one of
oh,
all
this
is
the work of art one.
mimicking Edvard Munch, The Scream.
Yeah, I thought this is the girl. Oh no, that's the old dude. That she's old, the one that makes everybody smooth. Yeah, that's from. She's from Ennis Lobby.
If any for me, they're all yours. I'll just watch.
Oh!
Additionally, now that we are getting a better idea of the true scope of this conflict, we recognize the sudden capture of Robin Usopp into the undergrounds of Prefect.
This is probably my greatest.
Also not part of those.
I think this is probably the greatest shit that happens in One Piece. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes down to, but to me, DressRosa is like it's top 3, top 2. It has to be right after Marineford. Jesus, because like this arc is beautiful. Everything is just
Flamingo's plan. Down there, Usopp and Robin learn of the little guy's struggles and how their people have been through a ton with the various rulers. Together they wish to launch a revolt against the Don Quixote family with the added help of the toy soldier. And while this is a B-plot, it's by all means just as crucial as the other moving parts of the story. For me, helping alleviate a lot of the tension and stress with much needed comedic value through scenes like Usopp lying to them pretending to be a relative of Noland, who is a hero to these little guys too, by the way. Which, on its own, is super interesting. And this isn't the only time the events of Skypiea are brought up either. Back at the Colosseum earlier in the story, Bellamy made everyone aware that he had been to the Sky Island as well, and caused all sorts of trouble for the inhabitants. Both of those events are curious, but more so the Noland one, as he, up until this point, wasn't brought up in any context outside of Skypiea. I guess he must have approached it from that direction then, if he did in fact go there. But as the Tontatas worship Usopp and Robin for their offered help, suddenly the entire island starts to shake. It's the titanic battle that's taking place outside between Law, Fujitora, and Doflamingo. This battle is really interesting.
Meteors.
While I was reading through it, there were subtle hints dotted throughout that there was more going on than I once thought. Like Law intentionally not using any of his energy to help the effort in getting to Greenbit in the first place, citing that he's saving it for Doflamingo, knowing full well that he intended on duking it out with him in the first place. But I don't think he counted on things going so wrong so fast. However, thankfully, the ship arrives to scoop them away despite Law insisting on staying behind to try his best at defeating him. But they can't get away. Looming above them,
this guy
spies Doflamingo.
This guy.
A massive strike when suddenly. This was amazing. Sanji has some of the best subversive saves in the entire series. Like, I see when this happened, and man, did I love it. And not because Sanji could stand up to Doflamingo, but specifically because he couldn't, and he tried anyway.
He tried anyway.
Especially for Sanji. And this was a key moment for him too, I think. Thanks to some clever planning and some perfectly timed teamwork, they managed to get away from Doflamingo for a moment with Caesar, but not with Law. Okay.
He said, wasted. I was waiting for the wasted.
Slow down. What the heck is happening here? This arc is bloody insane with the amount of things that are happening and how often things progress in this. It's a long story, admittedly, but it's by no means boring. It's one of the most consistently interesting stories I've been exposed to so far in One Piece. Like, Luffy, Zoro, and Kid are gathered towards the Colosseum with Zoro getting Luffy lit for not telling him about the tournament in the first place, when suddenly, boom, down comes Doflamingo with Law as if to prove a point. And Doflamingo shoots Law with a gun now. Where have I seen that kind of behavior before?
What?
To make matters worse, Zoro lunges in to help but is stopped in his tracks by the new Admiral who...
Where have I seen that one before?
Tora. And Luffy can't
Oh,
help
shit.
because, get this, the bars of the Colosseum are sea prism. The Colosseum is clearly built to hold people inside, and if you thought things couldn't get any worse, they friggin' do. Rigging through on a sail is the team back safely on the Sunny, only they're not safe. They're being pursued by Big Mom. This was the single best secret event I've ever experienced in One Piece. The suspense, the not knowing, the action, the excitement, and the reveals. It doesn't stop to catch its breath for even a split second.
It's just goes and goes.
A story like this, and it's something that only could be possible with a story as deep and fleshed out as One Piece.
It just goes and goes, baby. Goes and goes.
What comes next? And needless to say, the Big Mom chase,
Woo.
I did not expect, even in the slightest, though her presence absolutely in this instance makes sense. Now,
It makes sense.
With everything having gone wrong, Law having been dragged back to the palace along with Doflamingo and Fujitora, Luffy trapped inside the Colosseum, and the revolution going down on this very day with nothing in place from the Straw Hats, this is exactly the sort of manic energy I should be feeling right now. All the plot lines are after converging in one form or another and splashed out in all sorts of different chaotic
Fucking
directions,
chaos,
leaving
man.
heroes at a massive
Chaos.
disadvantage. It's spectacular to read through. And it's at this point in the story I should mention that my reading experience during this arc has been significantly better than that which I've experienced since the time skip. Not to say that anything I've read through was bad or anything, but
Everything was more episodic and kind of giving a gist to all the crew hats, all the Straw Hat crews, powers, and how things kind of were. That's what I got from it. I got that the first two arcs kind of did that, but this arc is pure One Piece. Oda was like chilling in the other two arcs. This is the one that he turned around and said, "It's time to kick in the jets."
this clearly is at a completely different standard in terms of pacing. Every chapter, it feels like a greater amount of progression has taken place and or something vitally important happens, with chapter 730 being a prime example of that. And I think it achieves this specifically because of Punk Hazard in this instance, as well as Fishman Island in the case for Big Mom, doing all the heavy lifting in terms of setup. But that's not to say that DressRosa doesn't set up anything on its own either, because it absolutely does.
Oh, yeah.
And you might think that at this point there isn't much video left to discuss, with there just being 15 chapters or so left to cover.
Wrong.
Holy hell, would you be wrong for thinking that? In this section of the story, I'm made aware of the level of patience this arc has in implementing its story. Having covered the events of the Colosseum and
holy hell.
building, we learn that those that lose are transported to the factory beneath the building and turned into toys by this little girl called Sugar. And let me tell you, this little girl freaks me out more than any other entity in the One Piece story, or maybe even fiction. Her powers are utterly terrifying, and there's no telling how old she is either, as these powers sort of freeze her age in time, apparently. So, okay, get this. All the toys throughout this island are her own creation. They were once people, but that's not even the terrifying part. The scary part is that once she changes you into a toy, everyone
forgets
I mean literally everyone on planet Earth forgets that you ever existed. But you yourself as a toy still remember everything, bound by a contract that Sugar utters after your creation. You must obey the Gon Quixote family, and you cannot harm people. Now, what's interesting about that specifically is while reading this, I recall that in Rebecca's flashback, the toy soldier could hurt humans. Specifically made aware of this fact during her own training sequence, teaching her how to defend herself. And this is hugely significant, as all the other toys seem to be bound by this one rule. And this is when we finally get a glimpse into the true life of the toy soldier.
Yep.
And before getting into it, without reading it yourself, I don't think this flashback can be nearly as effective.
No.
Going by the name of Kiros, having grown up a down-and-out thug on the streets with tremendous
Down-and-out
fighting
thug.
potential, he was eventually taken into the Colosseum to fight. There, he easily racked up 100 fights won with 0 losses in record time.
Easy.
And as the fights rolled on by, in only a matter of 9 years, he accumulated 3,000 consecutive victories,
9
eventually
years.
gaining a new respect for himself and ultimately became the leader of the royal family's guard. This is where we see Viola, King Riku, and Rebecca's mother. And it's in this flashback that we learn that he was not only Rebecca's father, but he was the statue that stands in the Colosseum grounds.
Yes.
We had all simply forgotten about the man behind the statue. And you know, it's a tale as old as time. Scarlet and he fall in love, they run off together, have a child, but all is not well in the kingdom. Doflamingo
When they
seems to
come
have
back.
caused a tremendous amount of chaos, and once Riku goes to investigate, he's captured and shot in his leg.
Kiros.
As soon as King Riku's life is put in danger, Kiros slices off his own leg and lunges at Doflamingo to cleave off his head. However, in doing so, Sugar manages to touch him before he can make contact, transforming the once immense gladiator into a small toy soldier. He escapes with the king, but the damage is done. Neither the king nor his wife, or even his kid, recognize him or remember him. I loved this flashback, and for me, it was one of the highlights of this entire
This shit
arc,
made me
creating
fucking
this
cry.
amazing,
I'm not gonna lie.
sympathetic character
That
in
shit
Rebecca,
hurt
Riku,
me.
and
I was like,
Kiros,
yo.
culminating in a moment that makes me cast my mind back to the start of the arc, where I learned about the statue in the first place. And this statue is mentioned on more than 1 or 2 occasions during the story too, but I never copped it or made the connection until this flashback illuminated all the mystery. And admittedly, at this moment, things aren't looking great for the protagonists of the story. They are either being pursued or trapped. Zoro himself being on the verge of death thanks to Doflamingo and Fujitora, all now having headed back to the palace. Oh
Then
wait,
drag his
I
ass.
forgot to mention something. It's a little important, nothing too major. Doflamingo is a celestial dragon. The lore in this story is ridiculous.
Correct.
So, now that I've learned about the 20 kings who all but one family gathered together to form the world government, I now know that Alabasta and the kingdom down there will play a massive role in the future. I foresee that the celestial dragons, or those with the royal blood, are capable perhaps of something or needed for something significant, and Vivi in Alabasta will eventually play a large role in the story once again. I have no idea what yet, but I'm certain it will rear its head eventually. One doesn't simply just leave a Chekhov's gun there with no reason behind it. There's just a crazy amount of stuff being covered in this arc, guys. So, the group being chased by Big Mom are fleeing to the island of Zo, thank God. Now I can focus my attention on the events of DressRosa, where Luffy wants to chase after Doflamingo, but is trapped in the Colosseum.
Chase to the island
Then
of Zo.
this happens.
Oh.
So I have this mystery person to look forward to now, and judging from the expression on Luffy's face and the last panel of that revealed chapter, I think I know who this is. But to be honest, moreover, from this, I am just in love with the world building on display in this arc. Between the Tontatas, who I've barely touched on but will in a sec, the Toy Civilization and Secret Society.
Man, this whole thing is crazy. That's all I can say.
The amount of information gathered about the past is
DressRosa's a fucking
to
ride.
buzzing to see what comes next is an understatement, and man, let's just
But-
dive into the revolution now that
Oh God, the second half. The second half. The second half.
Into the factory to take out Sugar and to free all the toys from her curse. In doing so, it will throw the country into disarray, and they will finally, hopefully, come to their senses about Doflamingo and the lies he spun to get to where he is today. Additionally, something of note here also is that Doflamingo is a terrific villain, if that isn't a
He's a
word to already.
terrific
And he
villain.
might be my favorite after Crocodile, and the arc isn't even over yet, so there's still a good chance for him to actually edge it over him. He has his own distinct identity, the powers are fierce yet unpredictable, and the backstory he shares concerning the past, as well as his overtaking of DressRosa, is both ruthless and calculated in equal measure. Serving this arc immensely. Had this been a lesser villain, the entire arc would have suffered greatly, I believe. And that's not even to make mention of this new character lighting up the finals of the tournament in Luffy's specifically, in particular, is my favorite section of the Tontata subplot concerning Usopp, Robin, and the little guys as their attempt to knock out Sugar and ultimately free everyone from their lives as toys
That's
and restore the
that's
memories of
the
country,
real plot.
probably the world.
The real
And it's
plot.
here in this section of the story, I believe we get a glimpse of the scope of Sugar's powers and what they might in this series. The idea that this person can effectively create a slave out of someone while erasing their impression on the world is incredibly unsettling and powerful. And this scene is filled with circumstances and scenarios
The
that I
dread,
thought were
man.
rich with character and just flat out fascinating. The first coming from Robin, who, when she notices that Treble, one of the key members in the Don Quixote family, looming over Sugar as a bodyguard, protecting her from pretty much anything even coming remotely close to her. And that's when Robin comes up with the ingenious move of pretending to be a worker there, informing them of a conflict at the dock that requires
God.
and I just love how smooth she is in this interaction. But the best part comes when Treble realizes that he's been duped and sees Robin running away, only for that Robin that he catches up to and pins down to be a friggin' decoy. Short, but a great scene informed by character. However, despite Treble out of the way, for now, Sugar proves to be far much more than she even lets on.
Yep.
Her changing a large number of the forces of the Tantatas to toys along with Robin. And again, all of their friends and family immediately forget that they've lost anything. She even eventually changes Robin. And Usopp forgets she exists. And this is when something super interesting happens. When I first watched this, I enjoyed the scene that ultimately played out, but I had some reservations regarding Usopp in this instance, thinking that he should have been past this sort of behavior for the most part. But thankfully, something super interesting was brought to my attention that really highlights the strength of Sugar's character and the importance that the Straw Hat crew mean to each other. You see, a lot of this history behind Usopp's bravery and really the crux of his bravery in general comes from Sogake. It's an identity that he's used in the past as a security blanket like in Thriller Bark, but when Robin was removed from the equation, not only did he suddenly find himself in a dangerous situation without backup, but he was also after losing the impetus for Sogake. He had lost all of his development and motivations throughout Hades Lobby, which is where a lot of his bravery and character was born. Now, obviously this is just conjecture, but I think it stands to reason that when Usopp lost a part of his crew in Robin from his memory, he too lost a large part of himself that made him as brave as he was today. Once again, it's the detail that this story time after time after time after time I'm blown away by, with callbacks to prior events, to fantastic subversions on the back of monumental moments. When it builds to a reveal, it never feels uninteresting to me, and when he builds to an action crescendo, it always hits its mark.
Yeah! Talk to him, Mark! Talk to him! Usopp! God Usopp!
Once again, it's the attention to detail that this story, time after time after time after time, I'm blown away by. With callbacks to prior events, to fantastic subversions on the back of monumental moments, whenever Oda builds to a reveal, it never feels uninteresting to me. And when he builds to an action crescendo, it always hits its mark. And this time is no different. With all the toys suddenly turning back into real people, and all the folks around the island suddenly recalling all of their lost memories, including Rebecca, who for the first time in her adult life remembers that her father is alive. And speaking of which, once Zoro begins his awesome fight with Pika, Luffy and Kinemon get very close to the palace. Without hesitation and mighty purpose, now fully back to being himself, the Titanic 3,000
Kiro!
And the loss of his greatest love, Scarlet, assuming the exact same position and attack he never got to land last time. With a massive slash, he beheads Doflamingo, much to the shock of everyone in the room. Having been waiting for this moment for 10 years, he gets this opportunity, and man was it cathartic. You can tell that this character was chomping at the bit to get his hands on
Chomping at the bit.
If you beat Luffy into the room, you know you're really keen.
Yeah.
As I said at the beginning of this video, this is only 40% of this arc. And Doflamingo is far from defeated in this instance. Revealing that he's been using a scapegoat body double, Doflamingo recognizes that things aren't going according to plan, and now that things are getting pretty messy, it's time for the birdcage. And to that I say, what the hell is that?
What the hell is that?
40% of the way through this story should tell you everything you need to know about this tale. It is, without an ounce of hyperbole, one of the most densely packed and enjoyable stories I have read so far in this manga epic. DressRosa so far has dished out more information than I can cover and has offered up more material than I even discussed in most arcs. And we are
This is a really fucking good arc.
We've been introduced to the bulk, if not all, of the subordinates of Doflamingo, with my personal favorite being Senor Pink, who is just the strangest, most delightful character Oda has ever concocted out of his mind. I'm sure I'll talk more about him next week. And it's this special brand of comedic strangeness mixed with awesome moments like Heroes offered, or heck, the Coliseum Finals, which, by the way, the end of that was chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss.
Again, absolutely perfectly, utilizing every character in it to the max. Rebecca?
He said, chef's kiss. I know! I know!
Being the
Right?
one and with Bartolomeo and the new guy protecting her from Blackbeard's imposing Jesus Burgess.
Jesus Burgess.
The cloaked figure finally grabbing the flame fruit and he erupting into the sky, propelling her, saving Rebecca at the last possible second. He is the victor and he is the returning
Sabo!
The Revolutionary Army, along with Koala, a little girl from Fisher Tiger's flashback sequence. This arc, it's nuts.
It's nuts.
Standing on the shoulders of the arcs that came before it, from this point in the story, I can really appreciate how the prior arcs have set the tone and set this one up. And honestly, I cannot begin to predict what's still to come. All has happened already, and we now have Sabo back. This is amazing. And honestly, I just want to get back to reading it. So,
bye.
This video, I'm sure to talk about God Usopp next week.
Yeah! Garusa! Oh, you already know I was saying it all day. All day, baby. All day, baby. All day, baby. God Usopp is on the... Woo! Look. I've been here long enough. I'm going to keep it short and simple. Like he said, this is only 40% of the entire arc. And it's wild. Wild. I mean, wild. Everything about DressRosa would be better than Marineford, to be honest. Except that I don't know, man. Marineford has a lot going. This has a lot going on with it too. Y'all gotta be the judge on your own. So go ahead, if you haven't been reading One Piece or watching One Piece, read One Piece, watch One Piece, get back to me. Let me know what you guys think of DressRosa, the DressRosa arc. Mark nailed it totally on the head. You know, there's not much to say. He said it all. Holy cow, yeah. DressRosa is chef's kiss, to quote Mark. And with that being said, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. Holla at the boy, DBGTX-YT. And I'm out.